Let's begin. You know, every once in a while, the truth comes roaring through the noise, loud, clear, and undeniable. And this week, that truth came straight out of the chaos surrounding Prince Andrew and his latest round of disgrace. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the British press... Chaps, they say good cause. The same press that spent years attacking Prince Harry and Meghan Markle has started whispering a new tune. They're saying what the rest of us have been shouting since 2018, that the way Britain treated the Sussexes was not only shameful, it was a national embarrassment. And finally, a few brave voices are admitting it. Britain owes Harry and Meghan an apology. But before we even get into the meat of this, let's take a deep breath. Because this revelation, while overdue, is drenched in irony. It's not coming because the British establishment suddenly grew a conscience. Oh no, it's coming because the monarchy has been caught in the mud of its own hypocrisy. A mess created by none other than Prince Andrew, a man who has turned the royal family's moral compass completely upside down. Now, let's talk about what's really going on here. Rebecca Reed from the newspaper wrote something that has the entire internet talking. A column titled, "This is what a real royal scandal looks like. We owe Harry and Meghan an apology." And you know what? She's absolutely right. But let's not pretend this is some new revelation. For years, people with working eyes and hearts that still feel empathy have seen this double standard play out in real time. Harry and Meghan's crime was never what the tabloids said it was. Their only crime was refusing to bow to a system that expected silence, submission, and the erasure of a biracial woman who dared to stand tall within the palace walls. Let's call it what it is: racism, classism, and cruelty wrapped in Union Jack paper. And now, years later, the same establishment that demonized the Sussexes for everything from holding hands to having opinions is falling over itself trying to explain why Prince Andrew, a man whose scandals go far beyond moral failing, continues to enjoy royal protection, public invitations, and quiet indulgence. Now, Rebecca Reed points out something very powerful. She says, look, in comparison to the depravity surrounding Prince Andrew and the horrifying story of Virginia Giuffre, the so-called dramas involving Harry and Meghan look microscopic. She's right, because while the Sussexes were vilified for asking for privacy, Prince Andrew was accused of preying on vulnerable girls. While Meghan was called difficult for expecting staff to treat her with respect, Andrew was accused of trying to dig up dirt on a victim of sex trafficking. Let that sink in. The difference between their so-called scandals isn't just in scale, it's in morality. Harry and Meghan's actions came from a place of compassion, honesty, and courage. They stood up against abuse, and in return they were abused by the very institutions that should have protected them. When Meghan told the world that someone inside that family had questioned what colour her baby might be, the establishment lost its collective mind. The outrage wasn't over the racism, it was over the fact that she dared to talk about it. They didn't care that she was crying out for help. They only cared that she broke the unspoken rule: don't embarrass the institution. But let's rewind a little, because this double standard has always been the royal family's dirty secret. King Charles has gone out of his way to make sure that Prince Andrew remains in the royal fold. Despite all the allegations, despite the settlements, despite the public disgust, Andrew has been seen walking side by side with the King at church services, joining family events, and smiling for cameras like nothing ever happened. And who's always right there beside him? Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, welcomed with open arms. Meanwhile, Harry, the King's own son, and Meghan, who did nothing more than choose freedom, are treated like traitors. They are excluded, mocked, lied about, and portrayed as pariahs. And if you really think about it, you realize that King Charles's message isn't subtle at all. As the article points out, every time Charles brings Andrew and Fergie to public events, it's a silent message aimed at Harry. It's saying, this could have been you, if only you'd behaved. But behaved how? By keeping quiet while your wife is torn to shreds by racist coverage? By staying silent while tabloids lie about your family? By smiling politely while your mental health collapses under the weight of relentless abuse? If that's what behaving looks like, then thank God Harry didn't. Because the truth is, the Sussexes are the only royals who actually tried to modernize that outdated institution. They worked, they inspired, they paid their own way. They brought in new audiences and global goodwill. They did the work that the rest of that family pretends to do for photo ops. And the article reminds us of something symbolic: Frogmore Cottage. Remember how they were accused of being extravagant for renovating a home the Queen gave them? The outrage was deafening. So what did they do? They paid it back. They did something no other royal couple has ever done. They refunded taxpayers for something they were entitled to. And even then, it wasn't enough. The British media moved the goalposts again. Meanwhile, Prince Andrew spent decades living in luxury, taking money from shady billionaires, flying on private jets to private islands, and still managed to keep his royal privileges until the public outrage became too loud to ignore. And even after that, he wasn't cast out. He was quietly reabsorbed, shielded, protected. That, right there, is the monarchy's moral failure. Rebecca Reed said something that hit hard. Harry and Meghan were never dangerous, never evil. At worst, they were cringe or tone-deaf in moments. And who among us hasn't been? But they were never cruel. They were never criminal. They never harmed anyone. And yet, the British press and the royal establishment treated them worse than they ever treated Andrew. And let's not forget, it's not just about Andrew's behaviour. It's about the system that continues to normalise and excuse it. When a man accused of sexual exploitation can be treated with more dignity than a woman who simply asks to be treated with respect, that's not just hypocrisy. That's a sickness at the heart of the institution. And still, the British media tries to equate them. You see it in headlines all the time. Harry and Meghan and Andrew, the royal embarrassments. As if asking for mental health support is the same as committing criminal acts. As if selling jam or launching a lifestyle brand is equal to trafficking victims. They're not even in the same universe. It's profoundly depressing, as Rebecca put it, that so many in Britain can't see that difference. That tells you how far gone the public conversation is. Years of tabloid propaganda have twisted reality so much that the very people who should be applauding Harry and Meghan for their integrity are the ones sneering from the sidelines, defending a man accused of the indefensible. And then there's this part of the article that should make every royal watcher pause. Rebecca mentions the rumours that Prince Harry's recent visits to the UK might signal a possible return to the family. But she flips the question, and she's right too. Why is it always on Harry to convince the family to take him back? Why isn't the burden on them to prove they deserve him? If King Charles had even a shred of foresight, he'd be begging Harry and Meghan to return. Not as scapegoats, not as figureheads, but as the vibrant global force that could actually make the monarchy relevant again. Instead, he clings to the past, protecting the indefensible and alienating the only members who still have genuine global goodwill. Because make no mistake, Harry and Meghan are still the monarchy's best PR assets, even from 5,000 miles away. They are respected, loved and admired across the world. Their names carry weight, not because of titles, but because of purpose. Whether it's through Archewell's charitable initiatives, Harry's work with Invictus, or Meghan's success as a creative entrepreneur, they've shown what real service looks like. Meanwhile, the institution they left behind is rotting under its own denial. So yes, Rebecca Reed is right. Britain does owe the Sussexes an apology. Not a small one, a national one. Because the truth is, Harry and Meghan were punished for daring to be better, for having empathy, independence and integrity in a system built on obedience and image. It's tragic that it took a scandal as dark as Prince Andrew's to make some people realise this. But here we are, years later, watching the same British media that once printed dog whistles about Meghan's DNA, now pretending to discover morality. Spare us, because those of us who've been following this story from day one, the Royal Sussex Squad, the global supporters, the people who actually see Harry and Meghan, we knew this all along. We watched how the press twisted every smile into an insult, every kind gesture into manipulation, every truth into a tantrum. And through it all, the Sussexes held their heads high. They built a life defined not by titles, but by purpose. They built a family rooted in love, not hierarchy. And that, my friends, is something no palace wall can contain. So when the dust settles, and history writes this chapter, it will be clear who stood on the right side of it. Harry and Meghan didn't abandon the monarchy. The monarchy abandoned them. And now, in the harsh light of Prince Andrew's disgrace, that truth has never been clearer. The institution that shielded a predator while shunning a principled son and his wife, that's not an institution of honour. That's an institution of rot. And the British people, many of whom are waking up to this reality, are starting to ask the question that terrifies the palace most. If they were wrong about Harry and Meghan, what else have they been lying about? So yes, it's time for that apology, not just from the tabloids, not just from the palace, but from an entire society that let racism, jealousy and propaganda turn a love story into a war. Harry and Meghan never needed the monarchy to shine. The monarchy needed them. And deep down, everyone knows it. And to the squad, our global community that continues to defend the truth, uplift compassion, and fight through the noise. This is why we keep talking. This is why we keep telling their story. Because the more light we shine, the less room there is for lies. So if you believe in what we're doing here, if you stand with the Sussexes, if you're tired of the double standards and ready to see love win over hate, make sure you subscribe to this channel, hit that like button, and support through super thanks to help us keep spreading the truth. Because the world needs voices that cut through the spin, voices that celebrate integrity, that honour compassion, and that stand up for what's right, even when it's unpopular. And remember, history is watching, and when it looks back, it won't remember the tabloids' headlines. It'll remember who stood for truth, who stood for love, and who refused to bow to hate. That's Harry and Meghan. That's what the Royal Sussex Squad stands for. So until next time, stay kind, stay informed, and keep your crowns polished. Because our light outshines their lies every single day.